And we're live. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast, everybody. My name is Rory Paquette, and I am, as always, your very, very humble, gracious, and grateful host. So glad to be here with you guys today, and really want to thank all you guys for taking your time to be here for all of our episodes. I want to thank you guys. Our YouTube channel's growing, so thank you for following us there as well. As you guys all know, we're also on Rumble, and the podcast itself is just getting better and better, and that is completely and totally because of you folks. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that. One of the things I like to do in return is try and provide unique guests that have a unique standpoint on things that you may not have heard of before, that you might not have considered before. And then after you hear it, you go, why didn't I ever think of that? So today I've got an incredibly interesting guy on my podcast, and I've learned a ton from this guy in like the 2 days I've been going back and forth talking to him. His IG account is fantastic. If you want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing and how you're actually thinking about your life, you definitely want to follow his IG. It's called Fit for Violence, and it's FIT, the number 4, Violence, VIOLENCE. Please help me welcome Matthew Sargent, defensive strength coach, to the program. Matthew, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here today, Rory.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. And this guy was fearless. I just met him, just approached him. I said, "Hey, I want to get you on a podcast," and he's like, "All right, let's do it," which I appreciate very much. Um, Matthew, let me ask you this first. Do you like to be called Matthew? Do you like to be called Matt? Do you like to? I mean, Sarge. What do you prefer?
Most people these days call me Matt. As a child, I always resisted Sarge because that was my dad's name, my brother's name, the dog's name.
Ah, all
But
right.
then when I got old enough to earn a nickname, I learned really quickly that I was far better off accepting Sarge compared to whatever else my coworkers would have given me at the time. So, yeah, I respond to any of them, Matt or Sarge. They both work. So,
Good deal.
whatever you are more comfortable with.
All right. Well, I'll spare you the lineage just for today, and we'll call you Matt. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Right on. All right. Matt, while we get started here, you are connected to a bunch of guys that I'm connected to, so we're almost like friends of friends type of thing. Some of the guys that I follow you, and I was able to find your Instagram account, came across my feed, and it was a reel actually that came across, and it was an awareness test type of thing. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but that blew me away to the point. I mean, I thought about that for like 5 minutes afterwards, and I'm on Instagram, and I was like, what the? So we're going to talk about that. But in general, for someone who doesn't know you, hasn't seen you, hasn't been on your IG, what is it you do?
So the goal with my Instagram and whatnot is to help people to be fit enough to defend themselves. And the biggest thing about defense is not necessarily being able to fight. It's a mindset and being aware of what's going on, being aware of your surroundings, and not ever putting yourself in a situation where you have to throw fists or utilize jujitsu or weapons or any of that. Those are all great skills to have, and I think they should be as men, we should be working on mastering them so we can defend ourselves and our loved ones. But the only fight you always win is the one you avoid. So having the mindset to avoid it in the first place, being aware of what you're doing, where you are, not having your head stuck in your phone, being aware of your surroundings, making your home a place that is not attractive to the criminal element, so you don't ever have to worry about what is my home defense weapon? Is it a shotgun? Is it a rifle? Is it a pistol? If you've put in the forethought beforehand, your house is not a target. Criminals by and large are kind of lazy and they don't want to have conflict. So the harder it is to approach your house, exterior lights, etc., the less likely you're going to be a target at all. So mindset is the biggest thing that I hope I can help anyone develop, because if you avoid the fight, you've already won.
That's awesome. That's a great way to put it. Wow, that's a lot to unpack, man.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
I
there are classes that take like 8 hours to get into all of that, and people are still like, "There's more I need to know." So,
right.
uh, yeah, but that's the gist of it. And should you ever actually have to go to any of the hard skills, the big thing, as you said, defensive strength coach. I want people to be fit enough that if they ever have to utilize any sort of fighting skills, that and they're in the fight for their life or the fight for their daughter's life, their wife's life, that their fitness isn't the limiting factor to their success, because you can't control another person's skill set. You can control your skill set and you can control your strength and fitness. So you can choose to sit on the couch for the next year and not do anything, or you can choose to get stronger and faster. And I'm here to help people out along the way.
Love that. This is one of the first things that hit me when I found your account, and I started going through your posts and that kind of thing is, I'm involved in a lot of this stuff now as an older guy. And so, for me, a lot of this was already in my head, already front and center. I'm already thinking about these things. One of my mantras in my, podcast is, the people who depend on you have to be more important to you than you are to you. And it's all about putting your family first, your wife, your kids. I mean, that's what you've got to do. Those are your people. Um, when I'm looking through your stuff, one of the things that struck me immediately as I'm looking through everything is, when I was a younger guy, and as I look at younger guys, especially, you're walking through the world with this, I hope, in air quotes, right? I hope nothing bad happens to me. So I'll just, keep doing what I'm doing until something bad happens to you,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I realized is, that's kind of the mentality that you're talking to. Am I right here?
Yeah, I mean, because there's the general thing is, the vast majority of us will go through our day-to-day lives every day and never have to worry about being mugged, being jumped, being held up. But if it does happen for whatever reason, you're wrong place, wrong time, fate, whatever your take on destiny is, it happens. That is not the time to real quick pull out your phone, call the local jujitsu gym. How do I fight? Like, that's not possible. Right. Um,
Right.
and I'm really big about preparedness. I'm not necessarily like a doomsday prepper, but I'm a firm believer that, and I would assume that you're right there with me, that part of a man's job is to protect and provide for his family. And if we don't have contingency plans, because any day you could lose your job, we're in a questionable economy. The average American's like one bad month from being homeless, I
Right.
believe is what the statistic is. So, like, with very simple preparations, you can have a 2 month supply of food. That way, if you lose your job, at least you have something to get you till the next end, right? It's just being prepared. I don't ever want to be in a fight. Like, that's, and the more I learn about fighting, the more I'm like, yeah, I definitely don't want to be in a fight, because you can't control what another person's going to escalate. So I could get into a confrontation with some jerk at the gas station who cut in front of me in line. He could be drunk, he could be mentally unstable, he could be a convict fresh out of jail, turn around and pull a knife and put it in my gullet. It doesn't matter how well I know how to fight, things can happen that fast. And once you
Right.
start a confrontation, you've lost control of the escalation. You might have a plan, but violence is a tricky beast. And the more you're aware of the possibilities, the more you're like, I'm going to keep my ego in check. My goal is to get home. I need to take care of my daughter, my son, whatever, your family is. Um, but to me, it's about being prepared, and it's prudent to be prepared. And the average American, I live way out in the middle of nowhere. If I call the police, it's at least an hour and a half if they come. But the average American who's in a city, even if you call the police, I believe the national average response time is about 15 minutes. Some bad dude's trying to break into your house, wants to cause harm to you, your wife, or your kids. By the time the police get there, the situation's over, they're taking reports.
Okay.
And that's if they decide to come. The Supreme Court, after Uvalde, has said that police have no duty to enter into a shootout or anything like that. And that's a whole different topic. And I think it's kind of honestly, it's lame. But if they come, they don't have to respond. So you're your only line of defense for you and your family. So
Right.
you can hope, but there's an old saying about hoping in one hand and pooping in the other hand. Um,
Right. See which fills
yeah,
up first. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So
No, I hear you loud and clear. We could spend the next 30, 45 minutes just talking about the state of the world. So, I mean, anybody who's listening to us has a pretty good idea of what the state of the world is, and they know, where I come down on it. That's for sure. I've made a lot of my positions pretty plain. I don't stand up here in a soapbox and just wax on about it. I leave that to the Dan Bonginos of the world, to go ahead and make those statements. But I am huge on personal responsibility, and that it is our job. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's happening with the world. It doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter what's happening outside of your house. You have to protect you and yours. Um,
and that's something that's been as true as long as humans have walked this earth.
right on. The Before I go further, I want to just make sure I'm drawing the distinction, because we get hit with this all the time.
Yeah.
The name of my podcast is Power of Man. So immediately iTunes started pushing me down the rack a little, just because it's Power of Man.
Yeah.
Eventually we, didn't publish any of the content they were afraid we were going to publish. And, we came back up. We're a place to help fathers and husbands kind of, find that inner fire again, and care about life. So I want to make sure I draw the distinction for you. You know what I mean? Your IG's, fit for violence, but I've looked at every single thing you got on there, man. There is nowhere in there where you are, you know, advocating for violence. You are basically doing just the opposite and saying, look, you prepare your house for a fire, right? You put up smoke detectors, you have a fire extinguisher. Prepare
Yeah.
yourself for violence and make sure you don't have to get into it.
Yeah. Hopefully you never have to use it. And it's a weird thing, because part of my workouts every day is I have shadow boxing, or I'm practicing grappling. I'm preparing for violence. I put time and energy into it. I go to the dojo, I volunteer and teach kids classes at the dojo. A lot of energy into it. And I hope to God I never have to use it outside of sparring. Um, but like you said, you have a fire evacuation plan, you have your fire extinguishers, your smoke detectors. It makes sense to have a home evacuation plan. Like, what happens if we hear something banging on the windows? Because if you don't have a plan and some bad dude's trying to come in through the door, you're not going to respond appropriately. I can guarantee you that. So you should have a plan. Okay, does the wife go hang out with the women and kids? Do we have a safe word? Because I'm going to draw a pistol or a shotgun and they're going to be in a bedroom down the hall. Is there an exit place that they can go and get to a neighbor's house? These are things that you need to think about just as you prepare for any disaster. And it just makes sense to have that plan and maybe even practice it occasionally. I think it's a good idea I guess my whole take is that violence, it's like your kitchen knife. It's a tool. I don't ever want to see you have to use your kitchen knife for something bad. You can use it to cut onions. If a bad guy breaks into the house, he could use it to cut your throat. That's bad violence. Or if a bad guy breaks into your house, you can grab that knife and return the favor. Violence, in my opinion, I want to keep violence righteous. And if bad guys are going to use violence against you, you need to be able to use violence against them. An author of mine that I really like is Tim Larkin, and he's one of his quotes, and this is gonna be a paraphrase, but violence often is not the answer, but when it is the answer, it is the only answer.
I saw you post. Yeah, you posted that. I like that.
And if you're not familiar with violence, you're not going to be able to use the tool when you need it.
Absolutely. Towards that end, I saw that you made a post here recently describing how every man should have a critical mission. And I thought that was another. It's real easy to say, you know, you got to take care of your wife and your kids. You got to be accountable, but you put another layer on it that I thought was really interesting and thought provoking. That I think a lot of guys need to take in and make sure they're actually considering for at least a minute. You know what I mean? Tell me about your critical mission idea.
Okay, so the critical mission, um, in a nutshell, is what is your goal? What is, as a man, what is your job, your duty? And part of why I'm an advocate for people to learn how to be a warrior is, to me, it helps reignite that passion for life. But we can get back to that because I know that's part of your mission. But um, for most men, it is our duty, our responsibility to protect for our family, our loved ones, to provide for them, to defend them. But as we go through our day to day routine, if we're not hypercritical and aware of that mission, it's very easy to get distracted and do things that aren't serving that goal. Like I said, you could choose to call some guy who cut in front of you in line at the grocery store a jerk, and next thing you know, that has escalated into a conflict, and you get your face beaten to a pulp, and you spend a month in the hospital. Have you done your duty to your family by letting your ego take control of the situation and calling that guy a jerk? Not necessarily, because now you've cost them money, you've cost them time with you, and it didn't defend them and it didn't defend you. It didn't help you provide for them. And I will be honest, like, I struggle with this because in my head it makes a lot of sense. But then there's also the part of me that if I'm walking at the park with my daughter and I see a kid has fallen into the river and is being swept away, I've got 15 years of prior swiftwater rescue training and was a river guide. I don't want to see a kid drown. There's a high chance I'm jumping in that river, save that kid, even though it risks my life. But I have this internal debate now, like, because if I drown, I can't protect my family.
Right.
Uh, and so I think it's part of it is having a mission, so you know that your day-to-day activities, are they benefiting the mission or not? But then it also makes us think about what our role in society and greater is. Because I can say, yes, in my head, I have that mission, and it is strictly to protect and provide for my family. Um, if I can benefit other people along the way, great. That said, I know I'm also jumping in that river after that kid. Um, and so I'm going against what I'm saying with the mission, but it makes me more aware of other actions I may or may not take. And I'm not necessarily saying in this realm I am the best example, but I know I have a hard time believing any father out there isn't going to jump in after someone else's kid.
Sure.
But if you, it also, I'm not saying it gives you an out, but if you truly believe that your family is your number one mission, then it gives you peace of mind in saying, "Oh, that's terrible. I'm going to reach a stick out. I'm going to do something, but I'm not jeopardizing myself." I hate to say it, if that kid's family was doing their job, they wouldn't be in the river, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, it sounds heartless, but when it comes down to it, I'm not Superman. I'm Superman to my daughter. And if I get hurt, I can't be Superman to her.
So this is why I love the post, because you didn't put the post up like as some absolute, you know, this is your guideline. And, you know, if you're a man, this is what you do. I mean, you actually said, what's your opinion?
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
and it's one of those things where everyone's going to have their own mission and their own definition of what it is. If you are the individual who has chosen to be a firefighter or a law enforcement officer or a soldier, God bless you all. I'm a huge fan of first responders, was one for a while, but
Amen. Yeah.
our world needs more heroes, um, and men who are willing to make those sacrifices. But that is a different mission, and you're going to train for it accordingly. And one of my big things with the mission is that as a dad, a husband, your mission looks differently than the law enforcement officers or the Navy SEAL guys' mission, right? So you are going to train differently because you are operating under a different mission. So why would you train the same way that a Navy SEAL is training? Because you don't have the same equipment, you don't have the same tools. It's you. You don't have a team. You don't have air support. You don't have, you're not a SWAT officer with a team, backup, etc. So part of having the mission is knowing what your operational guidelines are and training accordingly.
Sure. I'm telling you, I love it. It gets me choked up because even as I've already looked at this stuff, I've already had these thoughts, you know what I mean? And I'm listening to you talk and I'm like, man, one of the things that I love about what you're doing is that, as a dad, as a husband, there's nothing I look at that's on your page that isn't instantly thought provoking that makes me go, man, you know what? Like even you just gave me the example about, the kid in the river. It's like, what do you do in that instance? You know what I mean? And the reason that I love what you're doing is because if you never take that second to even have that thought and say, what would I do? Then the first time it happens to you, you've never thought about it, you know?
Yep.
That leads me into this other thing. And the thing that caught my eye right off the bat before I even looked up your profile was your awareness challenge. Okay. And you had the one with the girl walking down the street, and drinking the smoothie or whatever. I'm going to let you tell everybody what it is so you can look it up and why. But that one, I probably watched that 6 times in loop. So, I mean,
Yep.
in terms of strategy on social media, good job, because just me, I watched it 6 times. You know what I mean? But I was like, whoa, and I've got a daughter, and a wife, and I worry about that stuff every day. Okay. And I'll let you kind of tell everybody what that's about, what it's for, why you do it. Go,
Yeah.
man.
So, I mean, I try and weekly have an awareness challenge on the feed. The one in case is one of my favorite ones that I've done to date. But yeah, it's a young, attractive looking gal walking down the street with a smoothie, and she's twirling and spinning and smiling and kind of oblivious to life. And as she walks down the street, there's, off the top of my head, it's been a while since I looked at that one. There's 6 different gates into alley doorways that she walks by literally right next to, totally oblivious to. And at the end of the reel, it says, how many abduction points did she pass? And no one watching it, I guarantee you, no one watching it the first time is watching her walk down the street being like, she could have been attacked there. She could have been attacked there. She could have been attacked there. I'm sure most people watched it at least 2 times, if not 6, if I remember the statistics on that one. But
Yeah.
And so part of it is going back to it's all a mindset thing. If we don't put ourselves in bad situations and we're aware of our surroundings and kind of aware of, you almost need to put yourself in the wolf's clothing and look at the world through the eyes of the wolf. If I was a bad guy, where am I going to do bad things, right? And either avoid those areas altogether, or if you are walking down an alleyway like that with multiple abduction points, you're walking off to the side. So at least, bad guy's got to come out of his side alley to grab you and can't just grab and pull you in, right? So like I said, 99% of this is all mental, and you can avoid almost anything if you've got your head on right and you're paying attention. I know you mentioned Nick. I don't know if he's still doing it, but for a while there, he was doing, a daily live stream
Yeah.
on his. And I was on with him, and we had a great time talking. And one of the biggest things we talked about was just situational awareness. And when you go into a restaurant, how many exits are there? Not necessarily because we're paranoid that someone's going to come shoot up the place, but what if there's a fire? You get on the airplane, they remind you the closest exit might be right behind you. It might not be in front of you, right? We're really good predators. Our eyes are forward. We're really good at paying attention what's right in front of us. But a lot of times we've been conditioned that we forget that there's an exit in the kitchen. Every restaurant in the country has to have an entrance and exit in the kitchen. If you're sitting next to the kitchen, the place catches on fire, your best exit might be through the kitchen,
Hmm.
depending on where the flames are, of course.
Right.
Um, but if you haven't thought about that and identified exits beforehand, you're in that situation where you haven't thought about it, you don't have a plan. The more unfamiliar something is to you, the more likely you are to freeze in the moment that you're faced with catastrophe. Doesn't matter whether it's a violent encounter, a force of nature, or whatnot. The more foreign something is, the more likely you're just going to shut down.
Right.
So it's having those thoughts, those conversations. I make a game of it with my 6-year-old daughter. We go in somewhere new. I'm like, how many exits are there? 2? What about this? Oh, 3? Okay. Um, because I can do everything I can do to be as situationally aware as I can. I can't be with my daughter all the time. I wish I could. That'd be
Right.
awesome.
I hear
There will
that.
be a point where she doesn't want to be with me all the time, which is sad, but it's part of life. If I raise her up right, she won't need me. So if I can get her thinking about those things, it makes me make sure I'm thinking about them, and I'm just adding another layer to me defending and protecting her.
Right.
So sometimes with the awareness challenges I post, it's more just observational. How many taxis drove by in that last clip?
Yep.
That is, as much as I like to get out there and film the world and try and create content, most of these I'm using stock videos, and I can't always find what I'm looking for. So um, that one was a gem, though, the gal walking down the street. And I do think it opened up a lot of people's eyes. And it's something because, and this is part of situational awareness, something I talk about. I don't think anyone else in the space is talking about, but um, there's these heuristic decision making tools we use. And they're basically a heuristic as a rule of thumb. I I walk out to the corner and pick up my mail every day. Nothing ever happens to me. It's safe walking out to pick up my mail, right? Generally speaking, heuristics are a good thing. They save cognitive load on our brain. They allow us to make decisions easier. And most of the time in social settings, they work really good. I was introduced to them through avalanche safety. I used to teach levels 1, 2, and 3 avalanche safety, did ski patrol work and avalanche mitigation at Beaver Creek Resort. And one thing a gentleman who is a very well respected snow scientist discovered was that avalanche safety gear was improving. We were educating more people, but avalanche fatalities were staying the same. So we had better gear, better equipment, better training. People were still dying. Why is that? And he looked at it and he looked at a big sample of avalanche accidents and he found that there were 6 decision making traps, these heuristics that were found in all avalanche fatalities. And generally there were 2 or 3. Um, so familiarity, the more familiar you are with terrain, the more comfortable you feel because you've been in this place 1,000 times and nothing bad has ever happened. You're more likely to make bad decisions in places you're familiar with, even if so in the context of an avalanche, even though there are signs of instability in the snowpack, you're more likely to say, I've skied this 1,000 times, we'll be fine. um, but this can be applied to situational awareness because you can say, I've been down this alley 1,000 times and nothing has happened. Doesn't mean there's not a bad guy in there today, right? um, And the tricky thing with the heuristics is that they're kind of a subconscious decision making tool that our brain uses because um, our brain is our biggest uh, user of our resources. You know, it's 20% of our body mass and it uses 40% of our carbohydrates and glycogen and whatnot. So the more our brain can do to make life easier for us or for it and to conserve energy, the more it does. So but other heuristics that can lead to bad decisions or a lack of situational awareness. We've got familiarity, acceptance, or you're out with your buddy who's jacked, he's huge, right? No one's going to mess with him. The criminally insane, asocial, the people that use asocial violence, sometimes they're looking to fight the big dude. They want to take out the top dog, right?
Hmm.
Being a hard target isn't always the best way to avoid being a target. Um, so Um, I like to, and if you go through my feed, I know I've talked about the heuristics a few times because I think they're important. And I think a lot of us let our guards down and go into what would be considered condition white. You're not paying attention. Um, Condition white when we should be in condition yellow because of the heuristic traps. And we think I've been to this gas station 2,000 times over the last 3 years. Nothing bad has ever happened there. I'm just running in real quick. I don't need to lock my doors. You come out and your car's gone. Right. Um,
Oh,
so that was kind of a tangent.
hey man, I'm just sitting here eating this up. I mean, honestly, I could probably listen to you talk about this stuff for hours, because it's just really interesting and it's stuff that every one of us needs to think about, and we just don't. You know, um, let me only because I have a limited amount of time on a podcast, but let me pull us back a little bit to, I know that you talk about your fighting foundations and efficient training. Just briefly give me an idea of what that is, what folks can
Okay.
find when they look that up with you.
Yeah. So the fight foundations you can find in my story highlights. I've got a couple other workout programs that I'm just putting making them look pretty so I can share them online. Um, but my big thing, if we are training to be defenders, protectors, um, and I don't care where you are on the path. I don't care if you've studied jujitsu for the last 20 years and you're a black belt, or you're just realizing this makes sense. I need to be prepared. I should learn how to fight. We're all busy. Modern life is not relaxing and easy, right? Like we've all got work, deadlines, get to spend time with the kids. Hopefully you get some time with the missus. Um, we've got a lot to do. So I'm a big thing about being efficient with my training. And it's something that took me a little while to figure in because I think the modern mindset is okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna do my strength and conditioning and then I'll practice. I don't care what martial art you do. As long as you know how to strike, you know how to grapple. That's that's how fights happen. So learn it. Learn. I don't care if you want to learn judo, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, kickboxing. If you if you master the basics of any of those, you're a step ahead of most people. Um, but most people strength and conditioning here, judo here, right? I go to the dojo twice a week. I like to train outside of that as well, but I found very quickly, most strength conditioning routines, you're taking 90-second to 2-minute rests in between working sets, right? And that's important. I'm not a huge fan of bench press. I don't think it's the most efficient workout for someone who wants to defend themselves, but I'm going to use it as an example. You're doing the bench, you're getting your pecs all jacked up. If you're lifting heavy, you're taking a 2-minute break in between sets. That's a great time to practice footwork. Or if you're, I like to work out outside, so this doesn't work for someone at a gym, but utilize that time to practice slow draw strokes with your carry pistol, and get some dry fire practice in there. So it's stacking your training levels. And the cool thing about that, if you look at neurological research, is if we are trying to learn a skill, whether it's an academic skill or a physical skill, the period during physical workouts or immediately after, we have more brain plasticity. So we're better able to develop the neural pathways needed for that academic skill or that physical skill. So you're at the gym, you're working your chest, you're doing chest and tries. In those 90 seconds to 2-minute breaks in between, and this isn't a hard workout, you're not training hard trying to get your heart rate jacked up. You can practice your shadow boxing, practice kickboxing, do shadow throws, shadow takedowns, reinforce that motor skill, build those neural pathways. You're stacking functions. You're getting stronger and you're developing that neural pathway to develop those defensive skills.
Interesting.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Good
So,
deal.
yeah, in the fight foundations, um, I designed that as like a 60-day, like you're not out of shape, you got to get back in shape. It's kind of the beginner level, but I believe off the top of my head, you'll do a set of push-ups and then you're doing slow draw strokes with an inert training pistol or a pistol that's cleared and out of battery, doing dry fire practice. And so you do that with your push-ups, and then you move on to body weight rows, I believe, and um, in between body weight rows, you're shadow boxing, and you're just working on form and technique. And whatever you're learning at your boxing gym, your dojo, practice that technique. I'm not here to teach technique. Um, Fighting is fighting. A lot of people get geeked out on what style of martial art you're doing. You're either hitting someone with parts of your body or you're manipulating their body grappling. Um, if you look at judo and wrestling, the only real difference, and this was a big problem for the Olympics, was in one of them you're wearing pajamas, the other ones you're wearing your underwear. Um, and and like modern judo has taken a big step away from what judo was in the 70s because the International Olympic Committee were like the fans can't tell the difference. So they've been making rules like you can't grab the legs in judo anymore. But if you look at like what judo was when it first entered the Olympics and what wrestling was, they're identical. They couldn't tell them apart, other than pajamas versus underwear. So, and I love judo. I'm a big fan. If you're going to hit someone, hit something with the biggest thing you can. That's the earth. So I like judo because you get to throw people into the earth. But manipulating someone's body is manipulating someone's body. I don't care if you're learning the Russian way, the Greco-Roman way, the Japanese way. If you can manipulate someone's body, you're doing better than most people. So I'm an
Right.
advocate of training. But yeah, working those skills into your training allows you to be more efficient, get your workout done, get your training in, go spend time with the missus, spend time with the children, get to work, do whatever it is you need to do. Because other words, it just seems overwhelming. Oh, if I need to set up an hour for my physical fitness routine, 45 minutes to an hour of skills training.
Right.
Um, it's no one has that time.
Right.
Um,
Now you're not just sitting here talking about this stuff either. I mean, I know you've got your IG account, and there's a lot of good advice on there, and it's a lot of thought provoking stuff too. But let's get down to you actually do offer courses in this sort of thing, physical preparedness and that kind of deal. I think you're offering them through Patreon, right, on your IG.
that's currently like I'm not a website guy, so I was like Patreon seems to be the easiest way to offer it.
It's cool, yeah.
Yeah, and hope at some point it will evolve. But um, honestly, there's so much information about working out there. Any of my workouts, they will always be listed free on Instagram and Patreon. If you want support, if you want success and you want results, oftentimes we need someone to hold us accountable. Don't make your wife the accountability person, because if you make your wife the accountability person, hey babe, will you make sure I'm working out daily? It's just one more thing she's got to nag you about. She's going to start looking down on you. You're going to get frustrated with her because she's nagging you. That's a lose-lose situation.
Right.
So if you want coaching, you want support, um, I've put together the Cultivating Warriors group. There's a couple different stages depending on how much you want to invest in yourself financially. At the bare minimum, I believe it's $20 off the top of my head. You get a monthly coaching call with the group. Next tier up, it's a weekly thing, or we can do one-on-one stuff where I'm checking in with you weekly. But as men, we need a support network.
Right.
And I believe one of your podcasts I was just listening to, we shouldn't be showing our wives our negative emotions. And I 100%, I'm there with you. It took me longer than it should have to realize that. But that doesn't benefit anyone. So having a support network, I think, is huge. And having a group of like-minded men who are trying to be better, trying to improve themselves, It's just beneficial. And one thing that we haven't talked about, but I know like you want men to reignite their passion for lives, to be better men, etc. I have found, I grew up doing martial arts. I was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu by the time I was 20. And then I fell into the fallacy. I went to college. I couldn't find a gym that matched the caliber that I grew up training with. And I kept saying, well, I'll find one eventually. And next thing I knew, it's been 20 years since I've been in a dojo. So I'm a 40-year-old
Yeah.
white belt, and I'm super stoked that I said I'm just getting back into it, and I found a great dojo. It's everything I hoped for and more. So maybe it was worth the 20-year wait. I don't think it was. If I could go back, I would tell myself just get into whatever jiu-jitsu gym you can, keep training. Um, but here I am, I'm back in it. Um, But when I started training again, all of a sudden, like the little BS things that were really causing me to struggle, the arguments with the wife and whatnot, it gave me that sense of purpose again. Um, and so it reignited that passion for life, brought focus back to my mission, brought the mission to the forefront in my mind. Um, but one thing that people don't realize, so a lot of times when people think about martial arts, they think of Asian, Japanese martial arts, right? The
Sure.
samurai.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize the word samurai actually means servant. And the samurai would spend his day training to be a better servant in any capacity that he could for the emperor, whether it was making his body stronger, his mind stronger. Um, so, as men, we serve our families. And if we can take that kind of samurai mentality by investing time in myself to prepare my body and my mind, I can be a better servant. That's what I'm doing. And that's what I encourage men to do. I'm not saying be a simp, do everything, but you are there to lead and serve your family.
Right.
And are you as effective of a servant without investing time into yourself as you could be, or are you going to be more effective? And I believe you're going to be more effective as a servant to your family if you take the time to prepare yourself, to strengthen your mind, and increase your awareness. Because then you're going
Yeah.
to better meet the needs of your family.
Love that. You mentioned that about how men need community. You know what I mean? Men need that support structure. They need a brotherhood, so to speak. And one thing that I haven't said enough, but it's a good place to start, I guess, is right here. You
Yeah.
know, men need more than one. You
Yes.
know what I mean? It's like you. I actually believe, that the rising tide raises all boats type of thing. You know what I mean? Somebody could be, following me, talking to me about, the mission that I'm working on and everything else. That doesn't mean I'm giving them everything they need by any stretch. And part of what I want to encourage guys to do, that are, in my groups and stuff like that, is go out and find guys like you who are going to give them one more piece of one more thing that may ignite them. You know,
Yeah.
and so I think that, guys like us, they kind of understand that, there's all these different pieces and guys need more than just one thing. I think that we're out there doing our best to serve our brothers and serve men in general. The guys that are out there going, hey, it's just me. You don't need to follow anybody else. I'm giving you everything you need. I mean, they're kind of setting up their followers for failure, and,
I
and
mean,
I hate to see that.
and like, I'll be honest, I don't have all the answers. I'm on the path myself. I'm trying to be a better man every day, a better
Amen.
provider. And anyone who says that they've got all the answers, um, well, I've got a pile of manure out by my horse farm too. So,
Yeah, exactly. So, dude, I love it. You offer a lot of stuff to folks. It's all on your Instagram profile. Like I said, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. Let me just kind of put it to you this way as we sort of wrap things up here. If we're talking primarily to husbands and fathers, that's our podcast. We do have a lot of younger guys who have started following us here and getting a lot more interested, which I love, because we're kind of preparing them for what they're going to be dealing with instead of all of us older guys dealing with what's already happened. Um, what if you can sum it up in one thing, great. If you need, one or two or something points, what's something you just want to like leave with everybody? Like, hey, when you're walking through your life, this is something I hope you think about. I hope you take to heart. Um, give it to me.
Mhm.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, no. It's a great question. I love it. I'd say the biggest thing that as men, what we should be thinking of is how do I best serve my family? And if you're a young single man, how do I best serve my future family? And going back to the samurai
Yeah.
example, that's going to be training and preparing. Training yourself to be better, to be capable of more, and preparing. It doesn't matter if you're preparing for a flood, a fire, famine, violent attack. You should be preparing for all of those things. And if you are really serving your loved ones, your family, in an honorable way, the training and the preparing are byproducts of that service.
Hmm. Love that. Really love that. All right. Listen, man, I'm gonna let you go. I know you got a million things to do. It's a weekend, it's around the holidays. I cannot thank you enough for taking your time to come out here and give all this gold, frankly, to my listeners. And I mean, wow, you've given everybody a lot to think about. You've given them an opportunity to, follow you and come and work with you, if that's the case. And I want to tell everybody again that the best place to find you
Is Fit for Violence on Instagram. Fit
okay.
for with the number for numeric for violence.
Gotcha. Right on. That's it, guys. So, follow Matt, look him up, go check out his profile. Matt, thank you so much for being here with us today, man.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Rory.
I loved it. Loved it. All right, everybody, listen. Matt brought up some fantastic points today, and I hope you guys really do take them to heart. One of the things that I'm always saying, everybody, is you're worth it. And this is another case where you've got to believe in you, that you can be that leader, that you can be that servant, that you can take on that samurai mentality. You've got to be that father, that husband that takes the lead, that takes the reins, that does what needs to be done. And if what needs to be done is you need to invest in yourself a little bit and make yourself, in fact, fit for violence so that you make sure that it doesn't happen to you and your family, you got to do it. And when you start thinking that you don't have the time or that you can't, man, you got to believe it. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And until next time.